Hi folks, in this video I wanted to take a closer look at the Maton AP5 Pro pickup system. So even though this is quite an old guitar, this is the most up-to-date pickup system. So this guitar originally came with the AP mic system, which was the system that Maton were using previously, but I installed the newest system, which is the AP5 Pro, onto this guitar myself. So even though this is an older guitar, it has the most up-to-date pickup system. So the reason why I wanted to do a bit of a deep dive video into this pickup system is because I wanted to just, well, first of all, demonstrate how versatile and capable a pickup system it really is. In the world of acoustic guitar pickups, this is right up at the very top for me, and I know for a lot of other players. It's an active pickup system, so it takes two AA batteries. So if you just plug this directly from your guitar straight into an amp or into a desk or sound interface, you're already going to get a pretty hot signal because it's an active pickup. It's an undersaddle piezo system with 6 individual piezo crystals underneath, and it also has a microphone installed inside. Now, right now I have a feedback buster here because just behind you, just behind the camera, I have my amp facing me. And that's basically so I can hear what the guitar sounds like through the amp for the purposes of this demonstration. So when we get into it, you won't hear the sound of the amp. I'll turn off the room mic, and the sound that you're going to hear from this guitar is pretty much direct. So I have a jack cable running from the guitar into the amp, and then I've taken a DI out of the amp into my sound interface. So you're hearing the completely clean guitar signal. There's no effects, there's no EQ, nothing. The only thing that you'll hear is the settings that I dial in here using this panel on the guitar, and that's it. So no EQ in post, no effects in post, just the raw signal from the guitar, from the pickup essentially. So the pickup system itself it's pretty self-explanatory for the most part. So you have a bass slider, you have a treble slider, and you have a volume slider. You know, they're pretty self-explanatory. There's a mic knob and there's a piezo knob, and they're volume. So let's talk about how Maton recommended you run the system as a starting point. Maton are big on encouraging people to experiment so that you get the right sound for you, which is what we're going to look at. But as a starting point, Maton suggests that you keep everything pretty much at 12 o'clock. So the microphone at 12, and you'll feel as you sweep these knobs, there's a click in the middle, so that's how you know you're at 12 o'clock. So at the minute, I'll play a bit for you, but first of all I just want to make sure that all these settings are in Maton's recommended starting position. So the microphone's at 12, the piezo's at 12, the frequency knob's at 12, and the mid sweep is at 12. Volume, I'm going to put about 75, and I'm going to keep the bass and the treble sliders in the middle at 50%, which is, and again, you'll feel like a click. So this is what the guitar sounds like, just basically using Maton's recommended settings. And remember that you won't hear the room mic, so you won't hear the acoustic sound of the guitar being picked up by this microphone. You're going to hear just the direct sound, okay? That's Maton's recommended starting point. It sounds pretty sweet to me. If you handed me a guitar and said, John, you don't have any time, just you need to go up on stage right now, I'd be pretty happy with that. I could get through a gig with that, no problem. But remember that everybody has their own preferred playing style. Remember that everybody has their own genre of music. You might be a very, very heavy-handed rhythm player. You might be the most intricate fingerstyle player in the world. So those two styles are quite far apart. So thankfully Maton have given us the capability to dial whatever sound we prefer in, just using the panel on the side of the guitar. No extra equipment required, which is great. So as part of this video, I'd like to show you how I get my preferred sound for fingerstyle guitar and also for rhythm playing. But before we get into that, I want to show you the two last knobs here on the side panel, which are the frequency sweep and the mid sweep. These are very powerful functions of the pickup, and I want to make sure that if you have one of these guitars that you know how to use these properly, because they are very useful, but you have to make sure you're using them properly. So if you go onto Maton's own website, they provide all this information. This is all in black and white. Anybody can look this up, but I have a funny feeling that some people out there aren't sure what these actually do. I think it maybe makes sense to talk about the mid sweep first of all. This mid sweep knob is basically a volume knob. So if you turn it all the way to the right, you are increasing the volume of the entire spectrum of the mid range. I think Maton have this information on the website, and I think it runs from 600 hertz to like 2,500 hertz. I think that's which is quite a broad spectrum. That's basically, this mid knob controls the volume of that frequency. Okay, so if you turn it all the way clockwise, that means you've turned the volume of the mid range up. It doesn't sound very good, and I'll give you an example of what that sounds like with the mid sweep, the entire way up. It sounds a bit tinny and a bit unnatural, so you're probably never going to have it at that setting. But here's where it gets useful, and here's where the real crux of this part of the pickup system really lies. The idea is that you are going to use the mid sweep and the frequency sweep in conjunction in order to find the frequency of that mid range that sounds the most unpleasant. And every guitar is going to be different. You can't just say, oh, well, I know that this works on this guitar, so it'll work on that Maton guitar and that Maton guitar, whatever. Every guitar is different. Every pickup system might be tuned slightly differently. Every room that you play in, every venue you play in is going to be different. It might be an awkward shaped room. There's so many variables, so bear that in mind. So this isn't like a one-stop shop to get this right. You have to do this pretty much every time you play or perform live. So let me explain. The idea is, this is how I use it anyway. Knock out the treble, knock out the bass completely, turn the mic off, because you don't want the mic to be colouring the sound at this stage, and turn the piezo up. This is just my preference. Turn it up full, because then you're getting the full effect. You're getting all of those frequencies as amplified as possible. And volume in around 80%. Volume doesn't really matter as much as just as long as it's loud enough for you to hear on stage, basically. So at that point, we're going to go back and turn the mids the whole way around to the right, and it sounds grim. Sounds like one of the old 1980s, 1990s guitar pickups that we all hated. Okay, so that's not a nice acoustic guitar sound, but that's not the point. The point is now we're listening to just focusing on the mid range here. And as you play, listen, and try and find some of the frequencies that you find unpleasant. And the way to do that is to use the frequency sweep. So you basically want to get the frequency. You want your guitar sound to sound harsh. You want to hear that harsh frequency. We're not trying to dial that out at this stage. We're trying to find it. Okay, so for this guitar and for this room that I'm sitting in, for this context, I think I've found it. And for me, it's sitting, the frequency sweep is sitting at about 11 o'clock at the minute, and I think I've found that. So we know where that is. We've exaggerated that frequency, and it's now time to absorb it back into the overall guitar sound. Okay, so it's at this point that I'll put my treble to about just above 50%. It's probably about 60-70%, because that's where I prefer to use it. The piezo's up full blast, and I'm also going to turn the microphone up to about 1 o'clock. That's where I tend to like the microphone, but I'll talk about that later. So at this point, what you're hearing is my preferred bass, preferred treble, volume, piezo's up full blast, and the microphone's set the way I like it. We have identified the frequency that I'm not fussed on using the frequency sweep, and the mids are still up full blast. So it's at this point that you try and absorb using the mid sweep. Bring the mid sweep back down until it sounds like a as balanced to your ears as possible. the minute it's at 12 o'clock. At the minute the mid sweep's at 12 o'clock. Sounds pretty good, but I brought it back just to 11 o'clock. So that sounds pretty good to me. So for like I said before, for this context, for this room, for this guitar, for that amp, this sound is right for me. And this is a good point to just finish off the video by telling you what my preferred settings are. They're basically just as the guitar is sitting right now. And let me explain why I chose these settings, or why I choose these settings 9 times out of 10. So the reason, some players, including Tommy Emmanuel, he plays everything full blast. Everything's cranked up to 11. That works for him. For me, I'm not a fan of the microphone being on full tilt. The microphone in this guitar, so hopefully you'll hear it. I'm going to turn the volume up to its full tilt here, and I'm going to sweep the microphone round clockwise until it's on full tilt. Okay, can you hear that hiss? So that's a feature of some of these microphones in the Maton system, and I don't really like the sound of that myself. And it's at the point of diminishing returns for me to use the microphone at that volume. You know, I'm not really a percussive player. I don't do a lot of slapping and tapping really, so it's less important to me. Plus, even if I was that kind of player, there's plenty of volume on this setting for the microphone in order for me to be able to do that. So the sweet spot for this guitar and for me, and the sound that I like, is in around 1 o'clock. So just beyond the notch, 1-2 o'clock, in around there. Like I said, the piezo I always run full blast. I remember playing a gig one night and I made a mistake and kept the piezo on 12 o'clock, which is the kind of the default position. And I couldn't understand why I wasn't getting my sound, why it didn't sound like my sound that I've been used to for so many years. Then I got off stage, even though I'd been looking at the panel all night and going, what am I doing wrong here? I hadn't noticed that the piezo wasn't up full blast. And I got off stage and I was, for God's sake, don't do that again. So I didn't. So I always run, because for me, like the 90% of the beauty in this pickup system really for these guitars is in the piezo, really. It's a damn good piezo. Yes, the microphone helps to add to the sound, but it's the piezo sound that you want in these guitars, so why not run it full blast? Bass and treble, I tend to run them just above the notch again, so 50% is where the click is. I tend to just push it so that there's probably sitting, for talk's sake, about 70%. The reason why I like it there is it gives it a bit more punch in both ends of the frequency spectrum. So you get a bit of punch in the high end and a bit of punch in the low end. If it sounds too boomy through a particular amp or through a particular PA system, I just bring it back down to 50, and if it sounds too tinny or too harsh, I just drop the treble. It's a pretty easy system to work out, and it's an easy system to adjust. Volume, I tend to run it around about the same, so probably 70-80%. And the reason why I don't run it full blast is just on the off chance that I need to have a quick boost. So if I'm playing on stage with other musicians or with a backing track or whatever, if there's more noise on stage than what I'm making, it's handy just to have that in case you need a sudden, say you're in the middle of playing a tune with 1 or 2 other musicians and it's your turn to take a solo. That boost is just ready to go and you're up. So it's at that point I bring it up to 100% and play away, and then drop down again when it's somebody else's turn to take a solo. And like I said before, I can't really give you a foolproof method for the frequency and the mid sweep, because this is something that you need to do during a sound check. So if you're playing a pretty big concert or a festival or whatever, and if you've been given time for a sound check and there's a sound technician at the front of the house, spend the time and do use the frequency and the mid sweeps to identify the harsh frequency that doesn't sound that good, and then use the mid volume knob to just bring it back so that it's absorbed. into the overall sound that you're getting. So, and remember as well, when you're playing big venues, or if you're playing like a big festival, whatever, your sound sitting in your room, in your studio, or in your bedroom, just playing it into the amp, it's going to be completely different once you're going through a massive PA system, where every minute detail of your sound is going to be amplified massively. So it's at that point that you have the time and you have the opportunity to fix those and to make sure that you end up with the sound that you're most comfortable with, basically. But also it's a good opportunity that if you're on stage and a certain frequency starts to hum to the point where the volume rises, and next thing it causes like a feedback howl, it's a good opportunity to use the capabilities of this part of the pickup to do exactly that. It means you can identify the frequency that's most likely to feedback on you, and then just dial it back. So identify first of all, then sweep to identify, and then bring the volume down. It's a pretty good system, and like I said, the beauty of this is that it's all there on the panel. Okay, it's not the most capable. It's not like a parametric EQ pedal or anything at all, but it's pretty powerful for something that just comes installed in these anyway. So yeah, for talk's sake, that is my preferred setup or settings for fingerstyle guitar. And I think really the only difference is if I was playing a gig like in a pub where I was maybe singing more than I'm playing fingerstyle, maybe at that point I would bring the volume of the mid-range down a bit lower, or quite a bit lower sometimes, and maybe a bit of the treble lower as well, because when you're singing, you don't want the guitar and the frequencies that your singing voice are going to be occupying on the spectrum. You don't want them to be fighting with each other, because you'll see people sitting in the pub going, "Jeez, would he never turn his guitar down or whatever?" So it's at that point that I would think, well, okay, my vocals are probably going to be they're going to be occupying quite a broad spectrum in the mid-range. So you might as well just bring the guitar down so that your vocals cut through. But again, that depends on your vocal range. You might be a lower singer, you might be bass or tenor, whatever, or you might be an alto and much higher, and then at that point you'll have to adjust that way. That's pretty much it, folks. That's all that I had to say. So if you, like I said at the start, if you do have one of these guitars and you're not sure how to get the best sound for you out of the pickup system, I hope this was helpful. So that's pretty much it for this video. So I'll see you in the next one. Keep picking.